setting it up. All right, here we go. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the third in our series of candidate Q&As, and today we have Ella Robertson with us. And Ella is running for chairman in the general election and also in the special election, right?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'd like to start off with just giving you a little bit of time to give us kind of like your background and education and work experience and stuff like that. So please tell us all about yourself.
Thank you. Haumedaki pi chante washte na pechu zapie taya wa'u yahipi. Mi chaje Ella Robertson. Mi hunka ke ina Cheryl Renville Dakota ate Toto Robertson ga let's see, I want to tell about my children. Dopa shichachak nupa takoja duhe mi hinaku Eric Wana echiapi. Sisitin ed imachaje Pever Edwati. So good evening, my relatives. I just wanted to introduce myself in Dakota, practice that our mother tongue. I feel it's important to learn our language, and so I'm still a beginning learner. And that's what separates us from the population is our language, our culture, our history, what makes us Dakota. And so it's never too late to learn. So that's what I'm doing, learning, trying to become more comfortable with it by introducing myself. And so greetings, my relatives. I greet you all with a handshake. I'm happy to be here. My name is Ella Robertson. My parents are Cheryl Renville Dakota. My father is Toto Robertson. My mother's from Bakuli. My dad's from Enemy Swim. I was born in Sisseton, and I've lived my entire life in Pever area, Bakuli. I have 4 children, 2 grandchildren, and a companion of 10 years, Eric Wana. I come from a family of leaders. On the Robertson side, we go back to Wabasha. On the Renville side, I can go back as far as Gabriel Renville, a little bit further than that, but he was instrumental in establishing the Lake Traverse Reservation. And so I feel like, you know, and my grandpa, Robert Renville, was a councilman for the Old Agency District. And so I feel when you are in these leadership roles that you have a love for your people. And so that's what I want to carry on, is having that love for my people and wanting to help to make our lives better. So a little bit about myself. I went to school at Sisseton Public School. I got my associates in Dakota Studies from Sisseton-Wapton College, my bachelor's degree from University of Minnesota Morris in American Indian Studies, and my master's degree from University of Minnesota Duluth in Tribal Administration and Governance. I've had a number of jobs working with Sisseton-Wapton College, the tribal radio station, and the tribe. My most recent employment, 2007 to 10, I worked in the Tribal Historic Preservation Office. From 2010 to 2017, I worked in planning. I've done work as a consultant for Flandreau-Santee Sioux Tribe, and I'm also an entrepreneur with a variety of skills. I do sewing, beading. I give presentations on natural foods and harvesting, gardening, the importance of that connection, to have that. I've been actively involved in the district, you know, since I was really little. You know, my parents were involved in the district, you know, we'd be at the meetings. I was a Powwow Committee rep for a number of years, and I'm a lifelong resident. So, you know, I think it's important to know what's going on with the tribe, how it impacts us, and just being, you know, listening and being vocal with the concerns that we have because, you know, I've lived here my whole life. So the things that happen here, they affect me. They affect my children, they affect my grandchildren. And so I want something to leave for them that's promising, that that they're proud of, you know, because in the past, Sistin Waptin Sioux tribe was trailblazers. You know, they're the ones who had business ventures, like, for example, gaming. You know, we established our gaming facility prior to them even having a National Indian Gaming Association. So I think it's really important that we do that for ourselves, so that we take pride in where we come from, and our people, and being a part of it, you know. And so that's a little bit about me. I live out in the country. I have, I'm working on self-sustainability. I purchased a wind tower, so I'm trying to, or I'm working on getting that installed, because I feel like it's very important to be self-sustaining. I have a large garden, a high tunnel. We're growing produce for ourselves, and we sell some of it. We harvest our natural foods. We have chickens and horses, and this year was our first year we purchased a calf, because we're anticipating if there was going to be a meat shortage, that, you know, we'd be prepared. And we're fortunate that we live in the country and we're able to do that. So a lot of hard work goes into it, and you have to be diligent. You know, the garden doesn't take care of itself. The animals don't take care of themselves, and so it is a lot of hard work, and so you have to be a self-motivator. You know, nobody's going to come and tell you to do these things to help your family. You have to push yourself to do those things. So that's a little bit about me. I'm creative. I think outside the box as much as I can, you know. So, and so before you start with your first question, I just wanted to tackle number 12 right off the bat, and to talk about my removal. Okay. And because I didn't want to spend too much time on that, because I want to make sure that I cover some of the other items that are on the list. So I wrote them all down with some information. So the question was asked about my removal, and so there was 4 charges against me, and I actually have all my paperwork. You know, the first one was gross incompetency. The second was converting tribal property or monies without authorization. The third, misuse of office, and the fourth was malfeasance of office. So I do want to share, and I don't know how clearly you're going to be able to see this, but this was one of my pay stubs dated January 11th, 2019, which shows my vacation time that was carried over from my employment when I was in the planning office. So a little bit of background was during my term in the planning office, I had a tough time in the planning department. The chairman wanted someone else to run the planning department. So I went through an assessment, but there was no findings in the assessment. And so I was terminated. I went through the grievance process, but I wasn't provided a hearing. And just to clarify this, is that the the grievance process does not have anything to do with your leave or your benefits. The grievance process only addresses your employment, whether or not you can go back to your job or no, you're out of your job. And so I know that that was out there, was that I lost my leave in the grievance process, and that's untrue. That's not a part of the grievance process. And the second part was that I paid myself. So I just want to share these two. So here's the, I'm gonna put it up to the camera, dated January 11th. And then down there, it shows that I have a balance of 119.25 hours. And that is annual leave that I had earned while I was the planning director. And at that time I was making $30 an hour working in planning. And the chairman refused to pay my full balance, which according to the policies personnel policies, that's mandated that your annual leave is to be paid in full. And so then I had researched federal guidelines because the planning office was funded by aid to tribal government funding. And so according to the 638 statute, which is planning has, or the tribe has a 638 contract with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and aid to tribal government was under that. So accordingly, then the employees, tribal employees that work in those programs also fall under federal guidelines. And one being 25 USC 5324, contractor grant provisions and administration. And it talks about the benefits. And an agency must make a lump sum payment for accumulated and accrued annual leave when an employee separates and retires from federal service, and so which would pertain to me. So I just wanted to answer that, and I wanted to share the employee action report because it was also said that I paid myself. And so the action report, you'll see that the only place that I signed was where it says employee signature. And so here's the ear, and here is my signature. So you'll see that the only place that I signed was on the employee signature portion of that. So, and you know, it was very, at that time, I thought it was highly politicized. And, you know, because at that time, with the planning director that had replaced me, you know, there was contracts that she wanted to be approved at that time, and which I had questioned. The lawyers were reviewing those contracts. So I kind of feel that it may have, you know, spurned some of the opposition that I received from the planning director. You know, the contracts were for her son, Richard Tallbear. And, you know, we were investigating the legitimacy of his company, which that it's appropriate. We need to do more due diligence. When we're contracting with federal funding, with gaming fund, any funding, we need to be looking at these businesses to make sure that they're legitimate. You know, do they have licenses? Are they licensed with the state? You know, or especially when it concerns tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, we need to be doing that research. And you know, we want to trust our people, you know, but we have to make sure that we're covering our tracks as well, that we're protecting ourselves and our investment. And so I think, you know, now since that time, the personnel policies have changed to set a time limit on when you can go in and ask for that leave if it wasn't paid, where prior to that there was no time limit. So I think that just the lack of an existing process would mitigate such a situation, which happened with me. And I just hated to say this, but my husband said, you know, nobody cares when they're saying bad stuff about you, but and this isn't just gossip or bashing, but you know, at the last election, you know, the people wanted me to investigate the people that owed money, and so I did that. I requested it from the tribal court system, and one individual owed $65,000 to the tribe. And so I looked into that to see how many, get a ledger of how often she had paid. And I believe she made 1 or 2 payments. I didn't bring any of those papers with me because that belongs to the tribe. So I don't have any of that paperwork with me, but she had made 2 payments. And, with the previous chairman, she was working in his office and with him, and there was no payments made at that time. So that was a concern. And she was one of the people that was the loudest on Facebook saying the wrongdoing that I had done. And so when I'm going to be straightforward and honest, that packet that had listed out all the individuals that owed money was given to council the day when they suspended me, and no action was taken. So to me, it's concerning, because standards are set high for certain individuals and not for others. And so I think across the board that we should all adhere to the same standards. So, and I want to apologize for all those that voted for me. I felt like I let everyone down by doing that. And
yeah. Ella, can I ask a follow-up question? Because
sure.
I think this is really interesting. It's really interesting to me because I think that in the past few years, we've had a lot of removals that the people haven't agreed with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that yours was one of them. And I'm really curious about how do we address that? What are your thoughts on it? Because to me, I got a copy of the removal guidelines, and I mean, I'm trying to think of how to say this in the right way, but I just don't agree with them. And so, as a person who's been through that process, if you get in again, is there anything that you're thinking about doing to address that?
Well, and any changes that happen in that manner, it's an involved process because it involves our Constitution. You know, and I've looked through the Constitution, and there is it's not an equitable process. For any of the executives, the council can remove those executives and they're judge and jury. But for a councilman, you have to have a petition with the signatures, I believe it's 30% of your district to sign a petition for the removal, and council has to approve that petition. So say that person is well liked on council, but their district wants them removed, council can choose to not hear that petition and not act on that petition. So, you know, I just think that our Constitution is an antiquated document that needs to be revised. We need to see how it's working for us and how it's not working for us. Because I think of the expense that we've incurred with all of these special elections. When I was teaching at the college, at that time, Eddie Johnson was the tribal secretary. And so I asked him to come in to talk with the class. And we talked about the special elections and how much is budgeted. How much does it cost the tribe? And so then we calculated for the previous, 5 special elections, how much it cost the tribe. Because a lot of the students, there was probably, I had 12 students, maybe 1 or 2 that even voted. They were a younger group, they didn't participate. So that was kind of a driving force for me, because I'm like, how can you not be involved? And because I've always been involved. I always want to know what's going on, because that's the legacy of my family. We've always, been involved because it affects us, so I tried to bring in as many program managers as I could. I taught tribal sovereignty, I taught tribal governance. And so I would bring in program managers to talk about the various areas, like say fishing and hunting rights and whatever, so that they could be introduced to that person. We even took both of my classes, we took a field trip to the tribe, and so that they knew their way around, because a lot of times the only time you go to the tribe is to get help. And so these are all the other offices, besides the one that you go to get help. So, and I think it's important, this is our, when we walk into the administration building, you know, that this is our capital, our tribal capital, and we need to respect it. We need to treat it as an important part of who we are, you know. All right, any other questions? Went off on a tangent a little bit.
Just about that whole removal thing. And then what do you think about other policy changes that affect, you know, council people? I mean, is there anything else that you would work on? I'm real interested in policy changes. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. So, and actually that will go into your questions 2 and 3, where you're talking about how would you get all the executives and council to comply with transparency. You're asking about amendments to the Constitution, how to make all comply with those amendments of enforced accountability. And I thought all of those were excellent questions. Because transparency is so important. Transparency encompasses communication. And I think like right now, communication is lacking. And when you don't know what's going on, you come with your own assumptions about what's going on when you're not given the answers that you're looking for. And as simple as answer the phone, you know, or as simple as publish a directory, so that if I get the automated system, I know which numbers to punch so I can talk to the person that's going to help me. You know, sometimes it's just the small things. But when I was in office, I had established a Facebook page, but I tell you, it took, you know, 2 months to get that Facebook page up and going. And we put as much on there as possible. And because a lot of people don't read the Shota, we use a lot of social media. So we need to be looking at what are the new ways that we can communicate with our people, make sure that they know what's going on. How can this benefit or not benefit them? How do I get my kids enrolled? You know, when is district day? When is council? When are elections? You know, the timeline of events that happens within the tribe, but also, you know, what assistance is out there to help me, and who do I talk to, and am I eligible? You know, that's a lot of times those are the questions that people are asking. But I think
we get on this page is a lot of times, you know, people don't know who to contact or what's going on.
Mm-hmm. And so I might not be in office, but you wouldn't believe the amount of questions and Facebook messages, even from people who aren't my friends. You know, they'll message me through Facebook, you know, asking, how do I do this or how do I do that? And so I help, you know, because to me, good communication is really basic, and it's something that is so important. And that goes along with transparency. So weekly updates is important. And I was thinking about, so Bakuli, we have an Iyakapdapi Facebook page, and I have not seen our councilwoman make a post on our page. So I'm wondering how many, you know, because you have to be, it's a closed group. I am a member of Haipa. I was invited to be a part of theirs, you know, but how many, everybody has Facebook, how many are posting on those pages and personally being transparent with their members? You know, if you can make a personal post about, hey, I'm at the lake swimming, then you can make a simple post about, you know, what's going on at the tribe, or hey, the education program has some assistance available, such, you know, things like that. And I think really what it is, it's a matter of taking, well, it's taking your job seriously. You know, that's in the Constitution. You know, it states about your duties and responsibilities. So, and council, they're at the top of the flow chart in our Constitution. And so even though they don't have signature authority for the tribe, that power is held by the chairman, the vice, and the secretary. They are up here on the flow chart. And I understand why it was drafted like that, was because they wanted the people to be in charge to determine, the actions that were going to take place. But when, now in this situation, with there not being any DCA, there's no district meetings, then the people's voice has been lost now. There's not that transparency, there's not that communication, there's no avenue for people to get these answers, to have their concerns addressed. So I feel that having drafting policies for council that clearly define their roles and responsibilities, and including transparency and accountability to the people, is very important. And of course the policies could cover other things, such as travel and office hours and things like that. But I think right now, everyone's main concern is the transparency and the communication. What the heck is going on and how come we don't know? Like, oh, hey, they're, putting, I think right now we rely 100% on Tom Wilson.
Yes.
And he's not a member of council. He's not an executive, but they put him up here as getting the information out to the people. That's his responsibility. And it's sad to say he gets some of the backlash, that saying about killing the messenger. He's been in the line of fire for just posting something. One time he had posted a list of phone numbers, and then people were on there complaining about, yeah, but I call there 20 times and nobody answers, but he doesn't have control over that. He's just trying to help. And so, yeah, I think down the line, and when I was in office, I had talked with council about that, because I had a concern for it. When I was in planning, I had incidences with 2 councilmen came in demanding action from me concerning their district members, and council is specifically legislative. So to come in and demand action from a program manager, I felt that was stepping out of the boundaries of what they were elected to do. Because we have an executive that we answer to. If they had a concern, a memo could have been drafted, could have been given to the executive, because at that time it was Bruce Renville that was my executive, and that person came directly to me. And that's why I think it's important to have those policies to even safeguard our tribal employees that are there. So that's what I'll say about that. And so yeah, I did discuss it with council a bit, that I felt that drafting up some policies would be good. And I had talked with this other nonprofit group, and they said, that's probably one of the toughest things to do, because if the definition in your constitution is loosely authored, confining them and really minimizing what their powers and authorities are, she said it's going to be tough to get the compliance that we're wanting. So
yeah, what do you think about the meetings, the council meetings being on YouTube?
I think that having council meetings is on YouTube, right, especially now, I thought that was a great idea. I mean, I know that there are some things that are going to be sensitive, that probably we don't want on, maybe we want a closed group with that. Say when we're discussing financials and things like that, like say we're talking about the grocery store. Teals is our competition. What if they log in and they're listening to our reports and what are our shortfalls? And so I think just knowing what areas that we need to be careful with, but otherwise general business. I think that personally, I think that we need more than just those few days. When the Constitution was authored, and it's went through a few amendments, we had a handful of programs. Now we have, it's over 20 some programs, I believe, maybe close to 30 programs that fall under the tribe. And so you're given 5 minutes, or 10 minutes to talk about your program. I don't think that we are giving it the time and recognition that it needs, because these programs are the ones that are servicing our people, our membership. And so when they're reporting back to their districts, how much information are they taking back? Because you have to fit one whole month worth of work into 5 little minutes. So then how well informed are the council people, and then how well informed are the district, the district members that hear those reports, and that goes along with good communication and transparency again, because we're limiting ourselves, and I think that's probably going to be the theme of the night, is going to be communication and transparency, but because it's lacking. And I think that probably, we could have 2 weeks worth of council meetings to really discuss what programs are doing, and the services that they're providing, so that we have a clear understanding. And so I'm on that issue. I do want to talk about when I was in office, we were working on assessments of our tribal programs. And I felt that it was very important because, number one, we want to know what funding they receive, identify that. Well, of course, during my term I went in day one, federal shutdown. So I was in the middle of a federal shutdown when I was put into office. So it was immediately crisis mode. So we're trying to get a handle on, okay, how many programs are federally funded, how much receive gaming revenue, all of that breakdown. But then we requested each program manager to provide their grant information, their reporting information, their employee data, who all do they have employed, what is some of their background, just a brief summary. And then we did a SWOT analysis. So that's your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Because I feel that our programs need to be reviewed annually. Because right now there's no process for complaints. Or are we stagnant? Is this program gotten a rut and they're not doing anything new, innovative? They're not out looking for new grant monies that can help expand their services. Those types of things, to really get a handle on where our programs were at, what type of funding that we had. And we were going to do interviews with the program managers, and then we're going to do separate interviews with the employees. How is your work atmosphere? Because a lot of times there might be something going on in the offices that they don't feel free to talk about, things that they could see improved. How is their relationship with their clientele? And thirdly was working on a Survey Monkey, so that we could have anonymous clients that were receiving services for those specific programs to go out, and they would be able to do a survey concerning that program and the services that they received, so that it's well-rounded. You're looking at it from all aspects. And of course that all came to a halt, but I feel that it's very important, because we have to remember, right now we're lacking in good customer service. Nobody's answering the phone. You're not giving good direction, things like that. Customer service is so important. And I think we kind of, we lost a little bit of that, probably not, well, every program, every employee, they have a client, even if it's internal. Their client is you know, the staff, because I'm doing payroll for them. Those are my clients. TANF, my clients are, you know, the women, children, and families. You know, realty, my clients are farmers and ranchers, people looking for home sites, people that own land. All the programs have some type of clients. You know, so we need to brush up on our customer service and, you know, treat them good, because our tribal members are important and they need to be treated importantly. So number 5 was drug testing. What issues are there with, so my question was what issues there were with the policy, because then once I understood where that question was coming from, then it helps to determine, you know, how do we address those discrepancies that they're seeing. So I guess I'm not, do you have any idea?
I think what they were talking about was, should there be more testing? Should they be testing more often? Things like that.
Oh, okay. Because I think, you know, well, they say it's random, but I got tested 3 times in a row. So I don't know how random it is. So, but I think, yeah, that, and, you know, how, I don't know how we would determine how much frequently, because I think you have your initial testing and maybe once a year. Is it currently? Do you know?
They do so much percent of the employees every year, and it's supposed to be random. But I remember when I worked for the tribe, I worked for the tribe for about 10 years at the same job, and I got drug tested when they hired me, and then I never got drug tested again. So I'm not really sure how they determine that. And then I think there was some concern because, you know, I think everybody always talks about Bruce Renville and what happened there, that he drug tested everybody and then was removed. So I think that the concern is that, you know, do we still have people that are using drugs that are employees and they're not getting tested? And then how do you fix that?
Or conveniently being absent that day because they caught wind. But I think at some point, yes, that all employees need to be tested, you know, because it goes back to honesty, you know, and, you know, if how honest, you know, we are, but I just think that, yes, drug testing, it probably should be more frequently than, you know, random, because like you said, if you only got tested the 1 time in 10 years, you know, it should be probably a little more frequently than that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe on your anniversary or some random day, then, you know, you're sent to do your test. But yes. So number 6 then was the debt, and if I had received or accepted any annual leave or bonuses. And so no, I did not. And I will not accept any bonuses or annual leave payout. Actually, when we first started into office, and, you know, we're all fresh and new in there, and I was talking with council, and I said, you know, this was a big issue, you know, that I had seen on Facebook from a number of people, was the leave buyback from council. And so I said, if this is what the people want, then that's what needs to happen. And so we did all made a motion, you know, not to accept the leave. But I mean, you're in you don't clock in. So I think that needs to change. You're not a regular employee that accrues leave. So I don't, I don't agree with, you know, accepting that lump sum payout, you know, or even, you know, because we've been in some iffy financial times, you know, and having those large payouts at the end, that's a lot of money. You know, it's a lot of money that could be used towards something else. And You know, if I'm elected, I'm not going to accept any bonuses. I won't accept any of the leave, the paid leave, or any of the, um, what do you call that? What was the last one?
Severance.
Severance. Yeah. I mean, because who else gets severance? You know, the regular employees don't get severance.
Yeah.
You know, and they could be there 20 years, 30 years, and they don't get severance. So, and that's, you know, just about being fair and equal. So the next one then was policies to address that. And I think that's kind of going back where we're talking about the accountability and transparency then is, you know, including that in the policies.
Isn't that the legislative policy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be revisited. There hasn't been a whole lot of changes besides enrollment and verbiage.
Mhm.
You know, putting in Dakota words or changing to chairperson instead of chairman or chairwoman, you know, things like that. There hasn't been really any major changes to our Constitution, you know, because I also believe that, you know, we should change the Constitution to seat the elected official right after elections, you know, because we have issues with, you know, they call it the lame duck
Yeah.
count. And it's detrimental to our tribe when you have lack of action going on for 2 months. You know, a lot can happen in 2 months, a lot. So yes, for sure, our Constitution needs to be revisited. And talking about our debt, and actually we were working on addressing potentially consolidating, but I know that from talking with Greg Bennett and looking at the terms of our loans, you know, we were actually getting really good interest rates. So I don't know that we're really going to get any better interest rates than what we were making, or than what we were getting. So one good thing that happened though was that the buffalo were taken out of hawk. You know,
Oh.
that they weren't that they were no longer on the records as an asset for the tribe. So that was a good thing. Let's see. But I think that, you know, we do have educated people that are experts and well versed in that area that can help. You know, a lot of times we don't utilize our own people that live right here to empower them. You know, we tell everybody, go off and get an education, come back and work for the tribe. You know, and man, did I have a hard time getting a job. You know, and that's a reality. That's a reality for a lot of people, because you don't come from the right family, or I didn't grow up here, so people don't know me, and so I can't get hired, you know. And I just think that it needs to be that we really need to empower our people, lose the crabs in the bucket mentality and start lifting each other up. You know, we need to start being positive. And I think if we have, you know, leadership that's positive and it by example shows how to do that, you know, that it's important, because then it trickles down. Let's see. And one of the other questions was
About the crossing.
Yep, the grocery store. So I know that they have new management, Todd O'Reilly. I did have a brief conversation with him some time ago, and he was telling me about, you know, what he's currently doing is trying to scale back on the inventory that we have. Because myself, I worked in planning. I know that the feasibility study did not support the building of a grocery store, and that's why Shakopee wouldn't fund the request, you know, for a loan to build the grocery store, because the feasibility didn't reflect that it was a viable business. But I also know I attended the Food Sovereignty Conference in, I can't remember what year that was, but one of the presenters was from Oneida tribe. And she talked about their grocery store. They received funding from USDA to assist with the building of their grocery store. And she said a grocery store is a socio-economic venture because it's more addressing the social needs, which, you know, because we're in a food desert, it's access to fresh and variety of fruits and vegetables and healthy foods and whatnot, that it's more providing of a service, you know, because on average, you're going to make, you know, cents on the dollar in profit. You know, some of the benefits are that we're employing our people, that we're recycling our money, you know, for the elderly cards, which, you know, they're not getting right now, but food stamps, WIC, and our own tribal dollars, you know, because that's one thing about our tribal people is that all our businesses around here, they support our businesses. You know, if it wasn't for our tribal members, you know, even the gaming portion of it, for the ones that gamble, they're the ones that are putting money into those slot machines that benefit everyone else, you know, from program to support to elderly cards, you know, but the crossings, Fuel Inc., Dakota Western, you know, I know that we've purchased trash bags from Dakota, you know, all of our businesses. So, you know, I commend our people for that, because that's the importance of buying local, is that you're putting back and you're building up your economy. And that includes our tribal economy. That's the importance of that. So I think, you know, I don't have numbers to give accurate determination as far as where they're at in profit and loss, how much is the overhead, how much are they bringing in revenue. But I think, you know, looking at now that we have new management, I see that they're scaling back, because he said, you know, sometimes we have products, 7 different brands of one product. He said, we're trying to scale that way back, you know, because I think we went way big and now we're paying the consequence of that. Now we're trying to scale back. They don't have Caribou coffee over there no more. I know that was an investment and that I feel wasn't really thought out. You know, if we were being successful, had a lot of traffic and enough to where we saw that it could support that, then you know, but not initially right off the bat. And so I don't have numbers to show, but I would like to see that, so that we could share it with our membership. How much did everything actually cost, including the Caribou coffee? You know, how much did all of it actually cost? And then go on to compare. And I guess that would be something even to ask Mr. O'Reilly. How does he feel about the changes that he's made? You know, that does he feel that they've positively impacted the store, where they are turning a profit? But like I said, you know, Oneida said, we made $25 this past year in profits at our store, she said. And they tell us, yay, because that's the type of profits that you make at a grocery store. And
I was at council one day when Todd O'Reilly was there, and he was talking about all the changes that they were making, and he was telling council, I'm going to make this store profitable even if it's $1, you know.
yeah, that's
goal.
And so that's where it's at. And I think, you know, if worse comes to worse and there's just no saving it, you know, I think it would be viable for us to, you know, put our detention center there, because we look at how much money we're pouring into the Roberts County Detention Center, you know, and I see you roll your eyes like, let's not even go into that, you know, but it's so much.
It's because my significant other works there, so I know all the issues with Roberts County, and that is just one of my pet peeves. So that's, I'm sorry, like an involuntary response.
But I get that because we did have a tribal member that worked there, and she resigned because of some of the issues that happened there. But if we're looking at the business end of it, you know, because I know that when we were originally planning for the large detention center, not only was it to house our own inmates, but also to contract with other reservations to house those inmates there so that it would turn some profit.
Or the
By,
marshals.
excuse me?
Or the marshals. If we
Yeah.
could contract with the marshals, that would be a lot of funds too.
Yep. And so I think that there's you know, a viable plan, and I think just determining what that is, you know, and how it can best benefit the tribe, you know, because putting all of that money into that building, I can't see it just sitting and going to waste. You know, we need to make use of it. And that would actually save us in the long run, you know, because I don't know how much is left in the account that was the set aside that we received from BIA for the detention center. Was any of the money ever put back that they borrowed, you know, to use for other things? And you know, so it would save us as far as construction, you know, but then we would have to go back in and fully equip it the way that it needs to be to house inmates, you know, because I know that they had there was specifications that needed to be followed. So going on to number 7, I don't know if we have a time limit. I'm already going in, it's an hour. I'm gonna talk really fast.
Okay.
Number 7 was off-res voting. So I am supportive of giving all members the opportunity to participate in our voting process. I think probably the issue is determining how we're going to validate our tribal members to make sure that it's actually them voting. You know, coming up with that process, the policies, you know, our operating procedures, how we're going to make that happen. And there again, goes back to the Constitution, is that Constitution needs to be changed to reflect that want of allowing off-reservation members to vote, because right now I believe it's only for military, education. Hold on, I have my Constitution right here.
Well, the Constitution says, I think it says all members over the age of 18. But our election code says that you can only vote absentee ballot for certain reasons.
Yeah, those were the reasons, was for if you were in the military. Oh shoot, oh right here, elections. Yeah, but I can't, there's specific, but
Yeah,
essentially.
But it's in the election code. So there's
Okay.
actually a disconnect between what the Constitution says and then what our election code specifies. So our Constitution says that any member over the age of 18 is eligible to vote, but our election code says that if you're going to vote absentee, it's only for certain reasons, and it's military, illness, all of those things.
Well, and I think that changing the code is a lot easier process than changing the Constitution. So I think
well, you would think so, but that wasn't the case. So
so I think investigating that further, you know, is definitely called for. And there was also a question about the petition. And I think one thing too about the petition is that council has to agree to take action.
oh no, not so what the petitions are about is there to call for a secretarial election, which would be administered by the BIA. And so then our council and our REB and all of our election boards wouldn't have anything to do with it. It would be wholly administered by the BIA. And so the secretarial election would be to fix that disconnect between our constitution and our code, and it would allow a vote on whether there should be mail-in ballots for everybody or not. So that's what the questions are for.
And I think that we need to be more timely, not prior to election. It should have been something that we continue. So if it doesn't work, you know, or no action is taken this time, you know, that the process continues on, because there's a lot of time involved in trying to get a petition signed, number one, that would support the action that you're requesting, and having, you know, public forums so that you're informing the people what the petition is about, so they can inform family members or whatever to get on board with what is trying to take place. You know, because a lot of times I think that a lot of these things fall by the wayside all the months of the year, and then come close to election time, then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, we need to, you know, we need to work on our blood quantum, you know, or we need to, you know, work on these different things. So I think that definitely, you know, it needs to be something that is looked at. And so just off reservation in general, so I wanted to talk about this a little bit, is that so we have a number of, well, number one, because I said I feel like a lot of people don't fully understand how some people became off reservation. You know, during the era of relocation, 1956 and on, you know, where they recruited families. There was Chicago, California, because I had plenty of relatives. I'm sure a lot of other people have relatives that were relocated out to these bigger cities, where they promised them, well, we're going to teach you a trade, you know, and once they get out there, then that's where the promise ended. You know, they get this free ride out there, and then they're having a hard time finding housing. They're not getting the training that they were promised, and then they can't get employed. You know, so there was a lot that happened during that relocation, and I think, you know, a lot of it stems from them just trying to disestablish reservations, trying to eliminate that dependency on federal government by getting these people away from the reservation. You know, another move towards colonization, you know, except for in the 1950s. And so a lot of it even wasn't by choice. So now we have these generations that grew up out here in the cities, and they've created their own groups, you know, different tribes, because this wasn't just Sisseton, this was, you know, a number of other tribes that I don't want to say participated, but I suppose participated in the relocation programs. And some of them made their way back, but some didn't have the means to make it back. They were so far out and couldn't make it home, you know. So then, you know, their children and grandchildren end up growing up out in these larger cities. And, you know, we have a large population over in Minneapolis. So anyway, I had connected with Crystal Norcross, who is active out in Minneapolis with, you know, a lot of our tribal members, but just with the other Native community out there. And we were talking about, she wanted to establish a satellite office. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, because I'd been to the office out there. The Minnesota tribes collectively have offices out there where they're able to service their tribal members. And so she said that she was working with their council, the city council, and they had tentatively, because first, of course, she needed documentation for the tribe that we were on board, to provide us 2 acres in order to develop a satellite office out in the Twin Cities. And so I was so excited because I'm like, wow, I had cousins that everybody's got cousins, that lives over in the Twin Cities. But I mean, that's a part of taking care of our off-reservation people, and that could be done if Minneapolis, well, of course, Minnesota has a better working relationship, I feel, in some senses, with the tribes there. South Dakota, not so much. But I know that we did have an Indian center down to Watertown, but working on those things so that even in these bigger cities that aren't that far away, Watertown, Sioux Falls, Fargo, that to provide those, even if it's just the central office where here's a directory and these are the services that these programs provide. This is how you enroll your child in the tribe, those types of things, because I think that's probably one of the biggest frustrations then is just communication and having someone to point you in the right direction, and if we have resources that we can make available and ship them out to be distributed, like right now, taking some masks out to help some of our tribal members that are out there in the cities, Watertown, Sioux Falls, Fargo. I thought about that because I've been, sewing masks. I thought, man, I could, maybe I'll talk to Crystal and talk about taking some of these masks out there to help with them. And Crystal Norcross, she's helping with distributing food. And she said, if you want to volunteer, to log in and sign up. And to me, it's important, that our off-reservation, they outnumber us on reservation tribal members, 60-40. And I think that we need to treat all of our tribal members equally. So let's see, what else did I have? I think that was, so then the next thing, number 8, when they're talking about the various revenues that were coming in and how is it going to be used. And so my question was, where were these numbers, where did they come from? And if it provides us a full picture of revenue versus operating costs, etc. Is it gaming revenue? Is it include federal grants and grant dollars?
Yeah, when we've asked this question a couple other times, it seems a little bit confusing. So I might go back and ask for a little bit more clarification because Leanne also had issues with that question. So I'm not really sure where those numbers came from.
I know.
Questions are just taken, off the page or sent in by people from the page.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow, we have $37 million. I thought we were broke. But I think, if we had that type of funding, and we're looking at projects, of course, the detention center is one that's at the top of the list, and it's been at the top of the list for some years now, but it seems like we're not making any headway with getting it built. And, I think our treatment center needs to be revamped. It needs to be updated. It needs to include long-term treatment for the meth and the heavy drug addiction that, is an issue here on the reservation. But even the off-reservation,
I think the plans, that's kind of an action. So the COVID-19 hospital that they're building with the COVID funds, after this pandemic is passed, then they'll use that for long-term treatment, is my understanding, just based on the council meetings that I've been going to.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I really think, because we need detox even, because when people want help, they want help right now, because tomorrow I might change my mind and not get the help that I need. So, but looking at
here's the plans for it. Let's see. I don't know how well I can show it, but they have phase 1, and they're pouring the concrete on July 7th, And then there's a phase two, and because they're thinking we're going to get more COVID funds, that will build the second part of it. And then on the top of it, they're talking about eventually there would be a behavioral health center there. So
because I know the original plans, because then of course I was on the committee when I was in planning for the detention center, was we were trying to make it all inclusive.
yeah,
The detention, to have adult and juvenile, the treatment, what else was there? Counseling,
yep.
behavioral health portion of it. So, and I think, just making one step is progress, so I'm glad to hear that, because it's definitely needed. But I think, as far as projects, looking at any viable project, like say manufacturing, I don't know what happened exactly with the hemp, that had started during my term in the planning office. And that's a part of thinking outside the box, is, looking at the hemp and what we could do with it, because I know, I don't know what they had did with the last harvest that they had, but okay, so let's jump ahead. Instead of doing the farming of it, because they're looking at things have progressed now in South Dakota. Approvals have been made, because originally it was included in the Farm Bill, and we were very fortunate that we were able to do the research project. So we were a step ahead, and when I talk about being trailblazers, we, for a minute there, we were trailblazers, when it came to the hemp. And so let's jump ahead again, and look at hemp decordation facility, because then once people start growing hemp, then they're going to need a place to process it. The closest place to process is in Iowa. Then you have to transport across these state lines. So let's provide that service here in South Dakota. And I had talked with a representative from USDA, and they said definitely USDA funding can provide assistance with that. Of course, not fully funded by USDA, but they would provide a portion. So, and looking,
what is that called? First Nations Development Institute.
Yep.
Them too. They would provide assistance.
Well, and two, there was I can't remember because I receive emails and updates, but I was trying to think of the funding agency, but we're providing funds for tribes to establish their own Department of Ag. And so that was one thing that I was working on when I was in office, because I think one of our most basic needs is food. We have over 100,000 acres. And I can't remember exactly what the number is for how much is farmable, but being able to do that, that's self-sustainability. Being able to farm edible crops. White Earth, they have agreement with Green Giant, and selling their product to Green Giant. And I totally talked about that, when I campaigned last time. But to me, I feel it's important, when you're looking at some of our basic needs, housing is a need, even water. We're completely reliant on BDM. Why aren't we updating the pump house up by Chioshpazina so that we're providing water for our own tribal members? Grant funding through HUD, ICDBG, we're always going after it for housing, renovations, houses, those type of things. Why not a wastewater treatment plant? To get that up and running, because there's so much pressure up there. It would provide at least the water for all of Ole Agency, Crawfordsville, the administration building, Chioshpazina, and compared to what right now we're paying for every drop of water that we receive from BDM. And so in that sense, we need to be self-sustaining.
Yeah, a lot of that work has continued, and I got this from planning too. So this is kind of like what you were talking about with the hemp going ahead. And
Mhm.
then what we were just talking about with the food, they were one of the plans, the long-term plans, is to build an indoor aquaponic farm. And I kind of think that they're eyeing some of that COVID money for that, because right now, we have the farm to family, um, that whole program, which is giving produce out to our people. But I mean, if we had those high tunnel farms and the indoor farms and all that stuff, then we could do that. We could produce year round for our own people.
Yep. Because we did have a high tunnel while I worked at planning up on Bellinger Farm, but since then that no longer exists. But we did do the market and feasibility study, so I imagine that's the basis for what they're doing. But it's exciting, to me. I think that it really is exciting. So I'm happy to hear that. Next is number 13 was the appointees, that there was one of them that was controversial. I don't know who that.
I'm not sure.
So my appointees were Erica, Fisher, and Kateri Bird.
Yeah. So do you have anyone in mind for your next political appointees? Would you hire the same people, or?
I have one that's I'm not looking at the same individuals. I do have one in mind, Mandy Grimmer. She has her IT degree, because I think I need to make sure that I have people that are equipped to take on some of the tasks that our office is looking at doing. So having an IT person to assist with, the online stuff, because myself, I really think that a lot of like our applications and that type of stuff, it needs to be online. Yeah. Everything's paper right now. We should be able to go online, click, our webpage should be updated regularly, and our live council meetings should be right on our webpage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that there definitely needs to be some changes, and we need to get into the century with what we're doing. Number 14 was the open door policy. And so like I kind of touched on before, like day one was federal shutdown. And so trying to allocate the time for, just having people pop in. We tried to accommodate as much as we could, but we did ask people, can you set up appointments? Because if I was on a conference call or in a meeting, it just made it really hard to meet with people when I had a full schedule. And so, balancing that out in a crisis, it was difficult, but we did take some people came back, made an appointment, and they came back, and we got to visit, and a lot of times they're just personally wanting to hear, what is my agenda? What are you going to do in this office? Or requesting assistance, which of course, the appointees helped with that as much as they could.
And this question actually came from a private message, and that person explained. And I guess she was an employee in one of your programs, and she had difficulty reaching you. And so that was part of it, is that with other chairmen, she was able to go and pop in and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes to talk about this issue in my program? And then, but she wasn't able to do that with you.
Okay. And like I said, we were working on the assessments too with the programs. So yeah, I think just making sure that that we address the especially the program managers, because they were a priority for us, and of course with the shutdown, it was kind of a unique situation. It's not something that happens every time. And two, and I'm going to be honest about this, when I went into my office, there was no files. It was cleaned out. And one of the appointees had some files, but not very much. So when we started, during my term, we started from ground zero.
Is
So
there
a lot.
is there not a transition period or anything? Or
We tried to transition, but so we ended up transitioning with the vice chairman's office. They brought my staff in and trained them in on how to, you know, do paperwork and how the process worked and introduced them around. But there wasn't with the previous chairman. And so I had a concern with that. So I brought it up with Greg Paulson. I said, because this is confidential, this is, what's the word for it? Proprietary information that belongs to this tribe. Now, where did that go? Because the previous chairman, that's not his right to take that information, those files, and take them with him. You know, so I don't know. So it was basically, we're starting at ground zero in when I went into office. So it was kind of really, we didn't know what projects were going on. We relied heavily on the vice chairman's office because he was there during the previous term. So he knew what projects were going on. So, you know, they provided us some help in getting on track, but even that took time. So like I said, it was kind of a unique situation. So I think, you know, going back to policies, that definitely needs to be a policy. Any papers that come here that are addressed to the chairman, those belong to the Sistine Wapton Oyate. Those aren't, you know, I didn't make copies of anything when I was removed. I left all the papers there because I feel that those are the property of the tribe and it wasn't my right to take anything from that office. And so I didn't. And so the other one was investigating people. Oh, so actually it was talking, you're talking there about embezzling. And so actually there was ongoing investigations, you know, and they're like, well, where's your file? So there was ongoing investigations with employees who were suspect of embezzlement. And so they updated me on what was going on. And I asked about what is the process. And that's the thing that's sorely lacking at the tribe is just SOPs, your standard operating procedure. So, you know, you have a big binder that says embezzlement. Flip over to that tab. And what is the process for that? Who is involved? Who is the designated investigator? And so that's where you're kind of, because there is nothing in place to say how you handle these things, that there definitely needs to be some policies drafted. But they were, you know, like I said, that we had investigated people that owed money. Let's see, what else does this one say? And I think the one thing that was important about that is that we need to have a specific officer, because right now currently the person that does the investigation also has a number of other jobs that they're doing. And so they don't get to solely use their time just for a thorough investigation. And so then they were working with what is his name that's over at the tribal police?
Oh, the criminal investigator?
Yeah, or not Orn. Yeah, isn't his last name something like that?
What is
it? Orn or
there's Bill Newstrand and there's Hawkins.
Bill Newstrand. And so, because I think Hawkins had just started when I had got into office, but even that, because it seemed really drawn out. He said that their previous chairman didn't address it. And because there was another investigation that had taken place and nothing had gone on with it, and because I didn't have a file to understand what was going on, that one kind of, I think it was handled after I was removed from office. But I think defining those roles and providing them the authorization that they need. So say they're investigating an employee, having the authority to go into their place of work and finding the evidence that they need. Because then, you know, if they're stealing from the people, you know, if that's what's going on, and just having that clear process, but also ensuring that the investigator is unbiased, that he's going to be able to do a thorough and fair job. It's important. The other thing was nepotism. I think the only time that I ran into like the potential of nepotism is when we're providing, a part of the emergency assistance is providing firewood to people that needed it. And because I'm very conscious of it, so I had my staff log in. We had 3 or 4 people that provided firewood. So my brother, he owns his own business that he cuts wood and sells wood. And so anyway, I made them document each time when they called someone so that it was equal, because I don't feel that he should totally be thrown out and not utilized at all, because that's his sole source of income. So making sure that it's fair among those 4 individuals that were cutting wood. And so we documented it to show that, you know, he was given a fair turn, but so was everyone else. Because I said, I know that people, you know, look at things like that, and but I didn't think that it was fair that he should not get any business whatsoever, because he is an entrepreneur. So,
Okay.
do you have anything else on that?
Nope, I don't think so.
So number 17, I wanted to talk about my larger vision for the tribe. You know, as a lifelong resident, I'm really committed to invested in what goes on with the tribe. And I think I kind of talked about it, you know, a little bit before, you know, about renewable energy, being self-sustaining, you know, really utilizing the resources that are out there, USDA, First Nations Development Institute, Department of Energy, the meat processing plant. That's been on my to-do list since I was in planning, because we had done a feasibility study that shows that it is a viable business that we can support, not only with our buffalo, but also one thing that we don't market is our walleye. You know, because right now our walleye, we have a hatchery. They just put them out in the lakes to provide fish for the sportsmen. But I think that, well, in the feasibility study, it clearly states that there is a market for it, because right now, any walleye that we sell at the Magic Connection, the Sioux, isn't our own. You know, we get it from Red Lake, and we shouldn't have to. But with the meat processing plant, I had talked with the representative from USDA, and they said, yes, there is funding available for that project, and you would be able to do buffalo and the meat, you know, but it would also help support, you know, the grocery store. And I think, you know, looking at the buffalo program, how much does it cost us to process a buffalo? You know, and looking at the cost savings versus us having our own meat processing plant and being able to do that for ourselves, you know, it's going to pan out. Definitely is. We can't take it to Hortons because they're not USDA certified, so it's not sellable. But You know, if we had our own meat processing plant, we would put some of our own people to work, provide them the training that they need to process meat. You know, that's another added bonus, is being able to do that. And, you know, if there's tribal members that want to get their deer processed, you know, that's a service that we could also provide that would bring in income into that business. And we've talked a little bit about the hemp products, but I think thinking outside the box, being innovative and creative, and, you know, leading by example, I think that are all very important things. You know, I'm a hard worker. Even during the snowstorms, I went to work. There was one day when I didn't go because our road was completely plugged, you know, and it took them a long time to clear our road. But, you know, each day that the tribe was shut down, you know, I was there at work, because, you know, it's important. It felt like there was just not enough time in the day to do all the things that needed to be done. And we tried to change the policy. I worked with HR and the lawyers to try to change the policy, you know, because I know that a lot of people were concerned about the time off that the tribal employees were receiving. You know, we were shut down for like a whole week and business wasn't being conducted. We started, it was at that time that we were defining who is essential and non-essential. And, you know, and anytime there's change, people are going to buck about it. It's not going to go over easy. But guess what? Now we're in a pandemic, and essential and non-essential employees had to be defined, because it was definitely needed. And I said, I'm happy that we at least started people, you know, the programs and council and executives thinking about who are essential and non-essential, because at that time we're in, you know, the government shutdown. And if worse came to worse and we couldn't provide funding for different programs, who was going to get to stay and who was going to have to come? Or in the snowstorms, who are we going to mandate to come in and be there to provide services, you know, have a skeleton crew to be open, you know, because we followed the TZ school shutdown policy, then we closed. And I'm like, if I can get to work, people can get to work. We're not going to make anybody come out when it's life-threatening. You know, we would use common sense. But I think in, you know, just making sure that we are being equitable in our actions, you know, thinking about, you know, everyone in how we are operating, you know, because it is central government. And I can see, you know, of course, but it's hard to imagine right now because, you know, we're in 90-degree weather, you know, but imagine, you know, when the snow drifts were yay high, and there's a difference between adults traveling and children being out on bus routes and such. So, you know, that was something that we had tried to change, because I feel that, no, it isn't fair that our Dakota Magic employees have to drive, you know, through everything to get to work, and everybody's benefiting from that gaming revenue that they're bringing in. You know, that's what when we're talking about being equitable, it's in all sense of the word, you know, how the difference between our gaming employees and our administrative employees, you know, the standards that we have for them are different, and it's not fair, you know. And so there's a lot of things that need to be looked at, and that need to be addressed. And I myself personally, I saw that Tom, I keep switching gears, but Tom had put on Facebook that he was going to be out to the Long Hollow district meeting and putting it live, streaming it live, you know. And we don't know exactly how long this is going to go on, but the people not having a voice, I don't think that's acceptable. You know, that we have technology today, you know, if you can be updating your Facebook, then you can have a meeting. You can be telling the people about what's going on, the actions that's being taken, and how it's going to impact them. We need to have clear communication. It's important. and we just need to be making our tribal members a priority.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for so thoroughly answering all the questions. I really appreciate it. And I just think that definitely people have a real sense of who you are and what you're about. So I really thank you for taking the time. Did you want to say anything else at the end of this before we finish?
I know it's always hard to promote yourself, but please vote. I'll work hard for the people.
Okay.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yes, I'm so glad that you joined us. And for everybody else, our next live is going to be on July 16th. So, oh wait, is that right? Oh no, it's July 9th. So 1 week from today at 6 p.m., our Vice Chairman Eddie Johnson is going to be here to answer questions. So please join us then. And thank you, Ella, so much.
All right. Thank you.